by the soaring inflation. Is the 1 trillion shillings allocated to the parish development model enough to resuscitate Uganda's flailing economy? This is The Frontline. NBS Frontline.
A budget that is supposed to move the country from a producer of raw materials to one that produces manufactured goods. That's what the Minister for Finance promised this afternoon as he read or presented to the nation the budget estimates for the financial year 2023-2024. Good evening and welcome to this edition of The Frontline on NBS TV. My name is Charles Mwangushampagi. And the panel tonight that I have, it's actually a mano because it's an all-male panel. We understand that the Honorable Winnie Kiza, one, has been missing in action, but two, is that following the release of the Omusinga of Rwenzururu, Charles Wesley Mumbere, the DPP dropping charges against him, plus 214 others with whom in 2016 there's been a lot of celebration in Kasese district, and I suspect that is where the Honorable Winnie Kiza might be. Let me introduce the people that I have in studio tonight. At the extreme end, all the way from Tororo, the Honorable Geoffrey Ekanya. It's been a while since we last had you in studio here.
Yes, thank you, Charles.
Very nice to have you.
Thank you.
And congratulations on returning to Parliament, because you had been out for some time and then you came back. You made a bounce back.
Yeah, by God's grace, eh?
Yes. I thought by the grace of the spirits of our ancestors.
No, Andrew.
So you are one of those who have adopted Western tastes?
No, Andrew, at the end of the day, whether you accept or not, there will be a priest to say last farewell before we lower it to the grave.
There wasn't one in the case of Katolo Bwama, your former colleague.
Really?
There was a debate about that. Yes, the church said they couldn't pray for him.
No, there was Pastor Bujingo. That's the church.
Eh?
That's a priest. Pastor Bujingo was there.
There's a debate of, but the Catholic Church to which he was, in which he was baptized, said they couldn't pray for him.
No, but he didn't say where you are baptized. You are talking about a priest.
Well,
and
that
Pastor
debate is still ongoing. We'll not go into that. May the soul of...
Isn't it interesting how we are willing to kill ourselves over a religion that was imposed on us by force? Some colonial conquest.
Yeah, well,
we are willing to die for it.
We'll debate that. Ofono Opondo is a frontliner and executive director at the Uganda Media Center. And he says he lives in Mukono, but comes from Molanda.
That's right.
Yes.
Good evening, Church. Good evening to our viewers. And good to see my young brother. I hope in this season of Parliament doesn't try to strangle himself again.
Oh, you tried before?
You don't know. You ask Andrew. You know, we have communication tools and skills.
Exactly, I agree.
But,
all the way from Kanyandahi village, Muchiko.
Kanyandahi City.
Eh?
Kanyandahi City.
Andrew Mwanda, he calls himself the old man of the clan. And
calls himself?
Yes.
First of all, I'm a Colonel General in the UPDF. I am Deputy King
in
of
UPDF,
Toro.
You had some army that you had created.
So Museveni came to Kanyanda. Remember, we had the peace talks. Then I was given the rank of
there's been
Colonel General in the UPDF.
There is a disastrous reemergence of a militia force called the Janjaweed in Darfur, in Sudan.
It has reimagined. I thought the Janjaweed is this other one which is fighting.
No, it has reimagined with the RSF, and they've killed a governor in that area today. So, and they're killing people in a very bad way. Andrew Mwenda is Chief Executive Officer at the Independent Media House. I think
and the grandfather of the nation.
Okay, if you claim so. And then we have from Kira Municipality, from the Forum for Democratic Change, and the frontliner, the Honorable Hon.Ssemujju Nganda. We're discussing the 52.7 trillion budget.
Did you forget? Ekanya is from FDC as well. You didn't say so. People may think it's just loitering. He's from FDC.
You've said it. Thank you. The Honorable Kanya is from the Forum for Democratic Change.
Actually, the Treasurer General.
Treasurer General. Yeah. Thank you very much.
And Ssemujju is what in the FDC?
can introduce himself.
He's one of the survivors
He's the mouthpiece.
of the Loop revolution in Buganda. He survived it.
Okay.
So he must be a tough cookie.
So you agree that Noop had a revolution in Buganda?
You know, they wiped himself out here.
And is he trying to get it back?
I
To win
don't
Buganda
think
back?
he's investing much. I don't see it anyway.
He lost his appetite for investment.
I think he thinks the return on investment in Buganda may not be that high. He would rather invest in the north there. He seems to have better prospects.
We are talking the budget, 52.7 trillion budget. Andrew was saying you need to round that off to the nearest whole and call it a 53 trillion budget. But the people who deal with numbers have a different way of counting, and they think that 0.3 is significant and therefore wouldn't add it. What does that mean? And the other big question is, how does this budget match with Uganda's heavy indebtedness? You just saw in the promo some members of parliament expressing concern about how much of that budget is going to debt servicing and whose debt is that being serviced and how is that being applied. Can this actually lead to transformation? And Hon.Ssemujju Nganda was whispering and saying, earlier we used to listen to budgets. Are they the same budgets we're listening to today? What has changed? The panel will be discussing all those. Here the minister says, Matia Kasaija says, when he gave the numbers that Uganda's average growth, like we discussed last Thursday, is in line with the average in sub-Saharan Africa, which is at 3.6%. But Uganda's was 4.6 last year, and is projected by the end of this year to be 5.5. 5.5 compared to what was before. The size of the economy is estimated at Uganda shillings 184.3 trillion compared to shillings 162.9 trillion last year. This is equivalent to United States dollars 49.4 billion, which is a significant improvement from 45.6 billion last year. The expansion is on account of good performance of the services sector, which grew at 6.2% compared to 4.1% the previous year. Agriculture has also performed strongly, growing at 5.0% despite the dry spell in the first quarter of the financial year. In particular, crops, livestock, and fishing performed very well. Industry grew at 3.9%, driven largely by manufacturing and construction activities, especially in the oil and gas industry. And then the other details. Inflation has significantly decreased since October 2022, when it peaked at 10.6%. Last month, the pace at which prices were rising slowed down to 6.2%, and prices of key items such as soap, sugar, fuel at pumps, among others, have significantly reduced. I must inform Ugandans that as of this evening, the major fuel dealers, Shell, also which trades under the name Vivo, Vivo Energies, which has the brand Shell, and Total Energies, have dropped their prices below the 5,000 shillings mark. I never imagined that would go back to below 5,000 shillings mark a few years ago, when the prices picked up.
You remember when you were trying to quote figures from America?
Yes, I remember, and you're trying to give us wrong figures on the show.
No. But Charles, is a drop a result of domestic action, or it is a combination?
Well, whether it's a result of any domestic action or international dynamics, it affects the consumers here, and in this case affects them in a fairly positive way. So let me start with, I want to state that I imagine or believe that the two members of parliament, did you attend the State of the Nation address today?
No, the budget reading or
the budget reading?
No, I didn't.
Honorable Kanya, did you attend the reading of the budget?
That's my boss.
No, your
Yes, there was a decision which was taken by the opposition that we should not attend the budget speech. Unfortunately, I only got to know that when I was already in Kololo. So I was there, and therefore I listened. And the speech of Honorable Matia Kasaija, really, if you are a student in a university, was a good speech, a good thesis. But the meat, was really not there. And I don't blame Honorable Matia Kasaija, because he was representing Mr. Museveni. if you look at the budget speech for the last 3 years, there has been kind of repetition and change of words. They avoided certain things. The issue of agriculture growing is consistent in all this budget speech. The investment in human capital has been consistent in all the budget speech. The issue of standard gauge has been there in all the budget speech. The hope of the investment in the oil sector has been there. But Madam Speaker was categorical. And this is something that the country has been talking about. The unit cost and the quality of infrastructure is very high. So the overall budget in terms of the development component, the unit cost in terms of for implementation of programs, talk about the roads, power sector, and so forth, is one of the highest. And she really demanded that government needs to take action. She was also categorical about the issues of government not fulfilling commitments. We pass budget and resources are not released on time and other commitments. Now, I really sympathize with the president when I was concluding and summarizing. He was talking about issues of Nyakana, and I was seated next to these NRM MPs. They were really sympathizing, say, really, the president needs to be guided. You cannot invest in 1 acre and get 6 million the way he was talking about, 6 cows, 100 liters of milk, and then he was talking about poultry. Then technically, because he knows we have been talking about this thing, and he used to talk about it in the 1980s, about Korea. So as he was concluding his speech, he said the economy of Korea is bigger than, I think, 4 African countries. He has been in power almost now coming to 40 years. Korea's transformation took almost the same period, and therefore he cannot blame anybody anymore. And the idea of Nyakana, 1 acre model.
Nyakana of Rwengaju.
Yes, the issue of PDM, you know it, he promised Ugandans 100 million shillings every year in every parish. They had to swallow the pride and say now, so far, parishes have only received 50 million shillings, and we have provided 1 trillion shillings. The issue of Myoga, 100 billion shillings. So really, for ordinary Ugandans who are going home with Kavera and having 1 meal, many children have not returned to school, let me tell you, because my wife has a school. Good, and this has impacted in several schools. And so, as much as the Honorable Minister of Finance really projected growth, but this growth is not shared by about 60% of the ordinary Ugandans. I'm telling you, the 40%, out of that 40%, 20% can slide into poverty any moment. Let me just give an example. Talk about the 500 members of parliament. If today there is Andrew Mwenda who becomes a president and he declares a martial law and says there will be no parliament, tell me how will those MPs will survive in the next few years? Won't they slide to poverty? So that is the situation which we are in. With all the due respect to my colleagues. And
if parliament was abolished today,
yes,
you'd give them what period of survival? How long would they take before they slide back into poverty?
I've said the martial dictator will tell you how long it will take.
Is this from experience of the 5 years he was out of parliament?
I don't think he's led into poverty.
Yes, so the situation is real there. And the few who have amassed wealth, who are looting, are really, they think they are doing well. And I'm saying it in quotes, they think they are doing well. But in reality, if they also leave the privileged position where they are, the accounting officers in government offices, they're also likely to slide into poverty, because some of them are put up buildings and malls, and beyond the first and second floor, the upper part is empty, so it becomes dead stock, dead capital. And the budget speech as I said, in terms of literature, is very good. That does not give us the necessary hope that to move this country into middle-income status.
That's one view from Tororo. Let's get another view from Tororo. Ofono Kondo, what was in this budget speech?
I think Tororo is overrepresented. That's the whole problem.
I think the scenario that's given from members of parliament, I suspect is from the 5 years.
It's from experience.
Yeah, because I saw him mid-term when he was out. He wasn't doing very well. That is not on account of the overall bad economic situation. Quite often it is because of the personal decisions we make, financial literacy. The people is referring to who have storied buildings that are empty. Perhaps they did not seek investment advice. If you're in our situation of Kampala, Jinja, Tororo, do you actually need to put up a 5-7-story building? What's the culture in Uganda? Who goes to do shopping?
And those the things that finance captures and UBOS to indicate that the economy is doing well. If you put up, like the NSSF building that they are putting up, so many stories up, then you count that as growth, isn't it?
Unfortunately, for now, that's part of the formula we use for calculating economic growth. It is similar to GDP. They get Hon.Ssemujju's money from Parliament and divide it and include me. And then they say we are doing well.
No, they get Ssemujju's money.
Yes.
Because he earns a good salary. They get you because you are the whole executive director, your money.
But this is what I'm saying.
Kanya's money, average it and then give it to someone in Molanda. This is what I'm saying.
Unfortunately, that is one of the acknowledged, recognized formula in the world. So until we change, until we find a better formula, we have to go by that. But let me go back to the original question you asked, whether the country is moving forward and whether there has been economic growth and development. The first answer, my response is, it is yes. And I agree it is not shared. The President, in the concluding remarks, gave 4 issues: recovery, expansion, opening up new areas, and then he concluded by saying we need transformation. All those 4 things are happening simultaneously at different paces. For example, there are areas that have fully recovered over the years. There are areas that have, like I keep saying on this show, if you go to any shop in Uganda, whether a corner duka, a big supermarket, a mall, you clearly see the number of local Ugandan products, whether raw or semi-raw or even finished, increasingly occupying space in those areas. Like the President said, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, for me when I was growing up, we never knew that somebody could pack millet and you sell in a shop. It was you go to your auntie's place, your grandmother's place, you pick for free. I never knew. Recently I was in Amuru. I found that there are people there who are growing pasture for animals and exporting to Egypt. Now, those are new exports. In this last year, I think for the first time, if I remember the Secretary of the Treasury telling us in Chankwanzi, for the first time, export of cement is a major item now in our revenue calculation on account of expansion in cement production within Uganda. We now export cement, I think, to Rwanda, to
DR Congo,
Burundi, South Sudan, and so on, in a big way. currently, we are even having surplus of sugar. We're exporting sugar big time. I think now sugar is like number 4 in export.
In the budget, they said $164 million from sugar,
Yes. So
$80 million from cement.
yeah. So the economy is expanding. We need to deal with the structural bottlenecks. And in my view, where the government is putting resources in infrastructure, in skilling, giving better skills, in my view, is a correct one. The problem, I think...
That's the human capital development.
Human capital development. I think the problem is, do we stay consistent? I seem to think that we have taken on many, but maybe understandably so, because of the democracy we are running, but also the cumulative effect of things that were not done for a long time. So we have very many areas we call priority areas. And therefore, we have continued to sprinkle limited resources, and they don't make the desired impact. Third to that, supervision. Supervision, designing, implementation, effective supervision. You have heard the president talking about, you heard him talking about, and these are things we have even members of parliament have discussed. Somebody comes up with a program, they go out to source a loan when they are not ready. The effect of which, we accumulate debts that are accumulating interest, the interest are accruing, and for 5, 7 years, sometimes even 10 years, the project is not taking off. Just look at the case of the standard gauge rail and so on and so forth, and many other projects. So I think that's where we need to put our eyes. Designing, costing, implementation, and supervision. Do we have the necessary technical skill, capacity to do so? I'm afraid we don't. And even where we have, do we have the commitment? It appears to me that quite a number of people in the economy, both public and private, they are out mainly to look at the weak points, the loopholes, so that they cheat the system. The corruption we're talking about, the corruption is not just by public officials. They do it with the private people. And so,
but we've repeatedly declared war on corruption. Why isn't it being defeated?
Well,
Repeatedly.
I will again go back. When was the Bible written, the 10 Commandments? We still fornicate. We still fornicate. So, we still fornicate. We don't respect parents. We don't. So, it is a struggle, continuous struggle. Hopefully, we can eventually surmount the challenges.
Okay, let me move to Andrew Nganda, but as I do that, Honorable Kanya, you have an invitation to visit Nyakana's farm. The RDC for Kabarore District, Festus Bandeva, says, Honorable Kanya should plan one of these days to come and visit Nyakana's farm to confirm that what His Excellency the President is saying are not just mere statistics, that they are facts.
But you saw him
He's
with
the
the
RDC.
Visanja in Iruweo.
Huh?
You saw Museveni with the Visanja
Well,
bicycle in Iruweo.
the invitation, I think,
I
can
was
extend
seated next to the MP
to the both of you.
neighboring constituency to the farm. He said it's to feed 6 cows scientifically, you need to have where you get pasture. You cannot feed it on 1 acre.
I think that Kenya doesn't understand modern agriculture. What the president was talking about, I think that Nyakana has a larger place where he produces animal feed. But and animal feed is part of his business. He produces animal feed, sells to other people, but also uses on his cows. I don't need a lot of...
Nyakana is watching us. He should send us a message and explain what he does.
Let me first of all explain to you. I have a friend called Emmanuel. He has a farm here in Gayaza. On just 1.5 acres, he has 120 Frisian cows. He produces 800 liters of milk. So he's much more productive than Nyakana. So how does he feed them? Because they are on zero grazing. He has somewhere he has animal feed which he cultivates, brings, puts it there on that 1.5 acres. And
How many animals?
No, I think
120.
yes, I think
Frisian
I
cows.
think the
On
argument.
1.5 acres or 2
I think the argument there is it
Yes.
would be a misrepresentation
Yes.
to say that from half an acre, someone is keeping 120 cows and from that is producing so much milk.
No, what you could
the
say-
other land that he's using to produce feed is part of what he uses
Yeah.
as a factor of
No,
production.
it is you who is misunderstanding it. You see, you don't need to produce your own feed. Assuming I have my 2 acres, I can go and buy feed from Nyakana. Because at my house, I live in an apartment, say in Kololo. But an apartment block, maybe I have 100 children. I don't have any garden. I can go to Nakasero market and buy food and feed my children. I don't need...
And would you say then accurately that you're feeding 100 children in an apartment building?
No, what Museveni was saying, and I agree with him, he was saying, he even gave a calculation. On that dairy farm, Nyakana makes 40,000 shillings per, was it 40,000 shillings?
Yes, 40,000. Yeah.
Per day as net income. That is
Per
net
cow.
profit. No, total.
Total, okay.
Yes, because I think a huge cost goes into animal feed. That is calculated. At least I want Ugandans to know that you don't need to have a large farm of pasture to feed many cows. You can, this man here called Ofono can go and invest in the production of animal feed. He specializes in raising dairy cattle. You specialize in raising chicken. You don't need to have a chicken feed farm. You can go to the market and buy the chicken feed. So you don't need a lot of land to have. I have a friend here in Matuga. He produces 1 million eggs per day on a very small piece of land, actually.
So,
1 million eggs.
Andrew,
And the chicken are in a raised building. So he goes to the market and buys animal chicken feed. He does not produce it himself. He does not need a lot of land
I've
to do
actually
that.
seen somebody advertising silage. Already
Yes, exactly.
done silage.
So what the president's argument, I wish he had developed it, is to say that for you to produce milk from dairy cows or chicken, you don't need to produce your own feed. I felt that that was missing in his speech. Other people can invest who have a lot of land, can invest in the production of animal feed, and others can specialize in the rearing of cows for dairy purposes. Yes.
So,
But I think even the bigger picture is the president saying it is doable.
Yes.
That there are certain things that the Kenyans have now, and majority of Ugandans, that it is difficult to do this. Take the example of we, the educated people from Makerere University. How many of us think that you can start a business with the capital of 50,000 or 100,000, where you sell a mirror, the single fingers of matoke, and 1 kilogram or 2 kilograms of pounded groundnuts. And if you stay consistent, you can actually make it. Majority of us educated, we think that you need to come with a big bang. So I think the main message really of the president that it is doable, and there are examples in different parts of Uganda that we can copy.
the question then will be, and which I would like to put to Andrew, is how does this budget speak to categories of people like that?
Well, first of all, I should tell you, I have a fundamental disagreement with the way government of Uganda approaches the subject of transformation. From my reading of economic history and political economy, Western countries were not transformed by the masses. They were transformed by capitalists, or what we'd call entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are always a tiny minority in a society. Joseph Schumpeter said about 4% of human beings are entrepreneurial. That's Nyakana. So it's not true that every Mutoro will become Nyakana. If you try to make everybody Nyakana, you are going the wrong direction. That's stupid. Two, once you have entrepreneurs, what we call innovators, 4%, Joseph Schumpeter estimated that another 16% are what you'd call imitators. So you have about 20% of the population that have those skills. So most people are risk averse. They don't want to take risks. Entrepreneurs take risks. So the important thing, and I felt the president made this point, that if you have the following number of Nyakanas and each one of them employs 10 people, you get, so for that is 10% of the population can employ 90% of the population. Isn't that also the Pareto principle of 80 to 20? Then you can transform a country. Now, where do I disagree with the government? I feel like, first, the challenge of Uganda, which the president states is a challenge of socio-economic transformation. What really does transformation entail, if you asked him to define it? It has 4 transitions, but we can focus largely on 2. First is a transition of most people's livelihood from depending on agriculture to depending on industry and services.
Which is what Kasaja says this budget is about.
Exactly. But every budget since Museveni came to power has been about that. But where we should challenge Museveni, and this is why I disagree with the opposition, they attack him on the wrong things, not the right things. You see, Museveni in 1990, if you look at the budget of the population census of 91, it says something like 73% of Ugandans were depending on subsistence agriculture for a livelihood. Last year, UBOS gave me statistics. 68% of Ugandans are depending on agriculture for a livelihood. So that shows you that we are not transforming. So if you have been reading budgets for 40 years, trying to transform a society, and you have retained 68% of your population dependent on hand to mouth, that's subsistence agriculture. That's a disaster. That's a disastrous failure. So what is therefore should be the primary investment? We need to invest to attract investments in manufacturing and services so that the vast majority of people, you attract excess labor out of agriculture into industry. Why is that? By the way, that is accompanied by another transition. People stop living in rural areas, they come to live in urban areas. So if you look at the ratio of the population of Uganda that is urbanized, is about 24% or 25%. So one, you have huge numbers of people in subsistence agriculture, still most Ugandans still living in the rural areas. So the project of social transformation under Museveni has been so slow, even a snail would have moved faster. And how do we stimulate this country towards that? It is to invest in manufacturing, especially because...
Does it matter what kind of manufacturing you're investing in?
Well, I think that we need to
or
say...
any form of manufacturing.
What are the areas of manufacturing should we invest in and build competitive advantage? Textile is one of them. Mobile telephones could be another, because a big thing that we consume. But I believe that a country like Uganda that produces cotton should be investing in producing half a million bales and processing all of it. I'll give you an example. In 2019, Uganda produced 220,000 bales of cotton. It exported 210,000 and earned $50 million. Then it got only 10,000 converted into cloth and earned $50 million. So the 10,000 earned revenue equivalent to the 210. Why?
That was exported raw.
That was exported raw. Why? And this, I do not know how I can get into the heads of government officials in Uganda.
But you are an advisor. So don't
Please,
get in their head. Just continue giving advice.
You can never get into an intellectual argument. You always want to go into the petty things.
No, but you are one of the advisors.
But an advisor advises. I am your advisor.
So you now want to get into the heads.
I am your advisor. How many times have
No,
I
you are
changed
not
your
my
opinion?
advisor, Andrew.
Look, I'm your friend. I always tell you things. How
No,
many
you are
times have
not
I
my
changed?
friend.
Me and Mwamsha have been discussing with you. You said me, I'm not going to change your mind. So you can advise someone who does not want to change their mind. Anyway, but let me come to the point. I have belabored this point. You see, development takes place in the context of international trade. I don't know any country like North Korea or Eritrea, which doesn't trade internationally, that is developed. And international trade is a hierarchy, is a value chain. Some countries produce cotton, others with cloth, others market high fashion. If you produce cotton, you earn 3% of the international market price. 3%. So you are a highly netted poor country, Uganda. If you weave cloth, you will earn 20% of the international market price. So you're a middle income country, Mauritius or Bangladesh. But if you market high fashion, Louis Vuitton, Dolce & Gabbana, you are France and Italy, you earn about 65% of the international market price. The process of development is a process of upgrading from producing low-value products into high-value products. So if you become an advanced country when you go...
High-value.
Yes, high-value. We should ask government of Uganda, how much are they investing in that process? Because we have materials we produce here, which we are not transforming.
Let me flip the question. How much does this budget that Kasaija read today, and the speech that the president gave, and the State of the Nation address that he gave last week, speak to what you're talking about?
I feel like they say it in rhetoric, but they don't devote sufficient resources to it. Because, I mean, so is Myoga, Parachute Development, because they have had all these programs, these popular programs, they're very good for getting votes, I understand. Maybe if I was a politician, I would act like Museveni, I want to get votes, Myoga, Plan for Modernization of Agriculture,
Youth Livelihood Program.
They are very popular programs. How much return do you get from there? Assuming that money they are giving into partial development model was put in, first of all, when the government of Uganda doesn't own banks, in other words, it cannot use external credit, but if it was put in UDB, a much more developed UDB able to fund investments in, you see, transformative investments require capital investment in excess of what private capital holders can provide. So you need the state to become to become the investment banker, to provide the resources, long-term funds to finance long-term investments. But look what has happened in Uganda. You got all your banks, sold them to multinational banks. Once you have sold them there, these multinational banks collect, commercial banks, they collect short-term deposits. If they lend them to long-term investments, of course, they will run into what we call a liquidity mismatch. Because you have so much of, you have Mwangushi and Mwenda's money and Ofono's money, they come to pick it at the ATM, but you have lent it to a project of 15 or 20, 30 years. So you need the state to become the one to provide long-term funds to finance long-term investments. When they say they're putting money into UDB, how much money are they putting there compared to the money they throw into these popular programs of theirs? So I don't feel, although Museveni keeps talking of value addition, I don't feel like the
That
budget is designed to drive, to do serious stuff in value addition. The second thing, by the way, I want to criticize the president about, he has this obsession with foreign investors. There are many Ugandans who are trying to produce processed coffee. But Museveni gets Pineti. He's always looking for foreigners. And let me tell you guys why.
He gets Pineti, he gets Velopilai and
They like these multinational businesses.
Process,
Yes.
cotton.
Earlier I had told you that the process of development is upgrading from low value to high value. Why is foreign direct investment a poor vehicle for that process? As a rule, guys, multinational corporations do not transfer the most innovative components of their business to their subsidiaries. Apple is not going to transfer the design and marketing of the iPhone to Uganda. That's done in California. Design and marketing of the iPhone constitutes 64% of the total value of the iPhone you use. So Uganda, maybe you're going to assemble phones and therefore earn 17 to 20% of the value. So you remain stuck in what we call the middle income trap.
Okay.
So since Apple is not going to do that, you need to build your own brands. The South Koreans and the Japanese or the Chinese are developing. Why? Because although China assembles the iPhone, they are producing Huawei, Tecno, and others. The South Koreans are doing Samsung. They are doing cars. They are doing high-end products. That's what transformed them. Perhaps we should ask the government of Uganda or the citizens of Uganda, do you know any product where we are involved in other areas of manufacturing, we are still at low value but moving towards high value? What is that product? Is it cars? Is it mobile phones? Is it television sets? Is it clothes? What is it we are in? I don't see it. So if you're talking of transformation and development, I don't see that path through this budget and the last 37 budgets they have read.
Honorable Hon.Ssemujju Nganda, the budget today, what is in it? What is it supposed to achieve? What can it achieve?
Let me start with the coffee. Around 1962, Vietnam was selling 500,000 bags of coffee.
1985, 2062.
1962. Vietnam was selling 500,000 bags. The last time I checked from coffee exporters, Vietnam was selling more than 20 million bags. If you look at our foreign exchange, recently it was gold and minerals because we are now stealing from Congo. Tourism, I think export of minerals, especially gold, had taken over tourism. And then tourism was number 2.
Kasaija mentions it even in his speech today.
Yes. Tourism was number 2. And then Ugandans who are on Cheyo, we are number 3. And coffee is number 4, I think at about 800 something billion shilling. 1962, Uganda was selling 3.6 million bags. I saw Mr. Museveni has been giving different figures. In one speech, he says we're exporting 5 million. In another, he says 6. In another, he says 8. At that time, when we were selling 3.6, I think the population of Uganda was less than 7 million. Vietnam, of 500,000, invested in coffee to reach 20 million bags. Uganda, I think self-driven. It's just people who today thinks that I can sell more coffee and get money who are in coffee farming. And then when the numbers go high a bit, then Museveni will say because we are distributing seedlings through wealth creation. And I started with that to come to the budget because you say the many points that Andrew Mwenda was making. If you look at this budget, our biggest disagreement with the government as opposition for many years now has been on allocation of resources. In this budget of 52 trillion shilling,
52.7, very close to 53.
Yeah, I want, okay, 53. 25 trillion shilling is debt management. The biggest item in the budget is going to be interest payment at 6-point-something billion. Last year,
Billion or trillion?
Trillion. We were even unable to pay interest on all the loans we had picked from commercial banks. That's why the figure has now gone up in the budget. We are also unable to repay our external debt. And as a result, our lenders now encroached on our reserves. If you read the Bank of Uganda report of December 2022, our biggest disagreement has been on the allocation. The moment you remove the 25 trillion shilling, which is going to be for debt management,
you remain with
and then you look at the items.
You remain with 27.3.
You look at the items, salaries and so on and so forth. Because of this debate, I looked at things like welfare and entertainment, 120 billion. Special meals, 200 billion shilling. Seminars, 153 billion shilling. Mr. Museveni, who is obsessed with science, his budget for donation, just one item under State House, donation, 153 billion shilling. The budget for Makerere University is 110 billion shilling, where you have a faculty of medicine, faculty of technology, all the sciences at Makerere. He has given them 110 billion shilling. And
less than what he has for donations.
Just for donation, not his entire budget for his residence and office. And then he will tell you now this country is for science. I think Museveni has lost direction. I don't know whether even the appetite is still there. I've kept speaking about Dubai. That country took a decision, we don't have resources, that we are going to specialize in three things, what they call the 3 T's. Trade, tourism, and transport. And all their investment is going to go into those 3 things. But in Uganda, our investment, I think Hon.Ssemujju spoke about that, the sprinkling. You are throwing resources everywhere because you want to excite the public. So what is it in this budget that is going to transform the economy? I don't see it. The trouble with many people who are looking at the budget, they listen at the macroeconomic big words and then don't go to the aggregate figures as they are provided by the Minister of Finance. If you read the aggregate figures, after the 25 trillion that is going to be servicing debt.
But there's something we need to put in context.
Yes.
Well, 52.7 trillion
Yes.
those are budget estimates. You need to look at how much is expected to come in from both domestic revenues and from borrowing. That number alone will drop that budget by about 6 to 8 trillion.
It may, because the last
of money that may not be collected.
This financial year that we are concluding, the projection by URA was to correct 27 trillion shilling. The last report I read about URA, I think they were claiming I need to establish the fact that they have corrected, the projection now is 25. So they will correct 22, they will correct 2 trillion less. But also the money from outside. And this is how
the projection for the coming financial year is 29. Yes.
But how did it come 29? At the beginning of the budget process, I think it was still about 27, 28. But because there are many items that had not been funded, government kept revising the budget. Not because they now think that the projections will go up, but just because they have to accommodate the items that they are not funding. And that's why this budget was revised 2 times. And I'm not saying it is a problem, but it tells you the fidgeting that went on. So for me, and I've told you as opposition, our biggest disagreement has been the little that you get. What do you spend that little on? Travel abroad, travel inland, buying of vehicles for everybody. I had a motion in Parliament 5 years ago And each financial year, this country is spending about 600 billion shilling on vehicles, buying, maintenance, fuel, etc. And those items have
and the
remained.
bulk of that money is being sent to Japan.
Yes, and those items have remained. The trouble is that when they tell you money for agriculture is 2 trillion, and I've seen you here flagging that, people think that actually it's going to be money doing agriculture. You remember when Salim Saleh took over NADS, the first thing he did was to buy pickups for military officers at 90 billion shilling. And then start buying fuel, paying drivers, paying what. So the amount of money that people who are running government are spending on themselves sometimes is more than the amount of money available.
We'll continue the scrutiny of this budget and ask what kind of budget needs to speak to Uganda's desire for transformation. There's also a question, gentlemen, I'd like to put to you. We talked about transformation. The other issue that Ofonopondo raised is recovery. What is this recovery supposed? When does recovery stop? And when does building and transformation actually begin? Someone here says, please, I am always appalled by the view of Andrew Mwenda and other economists about transformation through pushing people out of agriculture in villages to towns to work in factories. Where is the logic in pushing this man from a village where he lives in his own house, grows his own food and cash crops, to town and work for a salary, and then spend it on rent?
But they are pushing
etc.
themselves. You go to Entebbe
It never
every day
makes
and
sense.
see those who are flying to the Middle
He
East.
says
Let
it
me show you
never
the
makes sense to him.
Let me explain to him. Let me make it sense for him.
Can you explain to him after a short break? Let me just take 1 or 2 more messages, and then we'll take a break. Sam Musana says, I'm not practical. 1 cow needs 1 acre to feed. No, it's not practical to say you can feed so many cows. 1 cow needs 1 acre to feed. Do you consider where they are sleeping or where he's getting pastures from? What about the liter of milk versus the cost of silage or hay? It's not cost effective.
And I agree 100%.
Let's take a break. We'll pick this up in a moment.
You will.
NBS Frontline. This is the University of Africa. On the streets, you get your real education. Here, everybody has a degree of something. But the most important qualification is imagination. His reason is to be the GOAT. The reason to imagine is to take the beat and make it lit. So no matter what your situation, just use your imagination.
As an importer, did you know that submission of import documentation and other required details such as manifests prior to the arrival of your cargo to your preferred clearing and forwarding agent can save you money? Provide your agent with the relevant import documents in time and get your cargo cleared in time upon arrival at the port. This will not only reduce storage costs for you, but also avoid the possibility of container congestion at the ports and improve the efficiency of the international supply chain. This message is brought to you by the Intergovernmental Standing Committee on Shipping in collaboration with the Ministry of Works and Transport.
Better steady. be better.
7 out of 10 of us have lost a substantial amount of money to fraudsters. Money we could have used to pay rent, invest in small businesses, clear fees, or send to mama in the village. Better steady and protect what's yours by being vigilant with your virtual transactions. Keep your PIN to yourself and only take calls from registered customer care numbers in case of telecom issues. Better steady, be better.
Better steady, be better. In partnership with
Uganda Communications Commission, Bank of Uganda, Equity Bank, MTN Uganda, United Media, Stanbic Bank, MTN Momo, and Uganda Bankers Association.
A brand new Global Star TV with StarTimes Inside Technology. New TV innovation with an inbuilt decoder that connects you to both StarTimes antenna and satellite signal. With StarTimes Inside Global Star TV, you can enjoy over 300 local and international channels, 1 month StarTimes highest bouquet for free, automatic system update, more benefits, more affordable. StarTimes Inside Global Star TV is available in all StarTimes branches and dealers countrywide. StarTimes Inside, entertainment inbuilt.
Are you tired of high fees and slow transfer time when sending money? Airtel Money is here to revolutionize the way you move your money. We have revised our rates back to ground. Sending money from Airtel to other networks in Uganda, East Africa, and to the rest of the world has never been more affordable. Dial *185# and start sending money. Switch to Airtel Money today and experience unbeatable rates and top-notch services for all your local and international money transfer needs. Airtel Money, instant, secure, borderless.
The Advocates Coalition for Development and Environment, ACORD, the Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group, CSBUG, and the Uganda Budget Network, UDN, in partnership with the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, are organizing a high-level policy dialogue on the economy under the theme Economic Recovery and Resilience for Inclusive Growth, Opportunities, Priorities and Strategies. The dialogue seeks to provide a platform for different stakeholders to discuss alternative policy options for inclusive economic recovery and putting back the economy on a sustainable growth path. The dialogue will be held as one of the Budget Month activities, which aims at popularizing the budget and increasing participation in the budget process, and will take place on Monday, 19th of June 2023 from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. at Serena Kampala Hotel, Katonga Hall. The proceedings of the dialogue will be telecast live on television and streamed on social media using the hashtag KnowYourBudget23. Attendance is strictly by invitation.